welcome back, my friend. Tonight, we step into the busy streets of Norman London, where merchants call across crowded markets, church bells echo through the mist, and the tower watches silently above the Thames. Settle into comfort, breathe slowly, and let the city's ancient rhythm carry you toward rest. Subscribe to Deep Sleep Storytelling for more peaceful journeys through history, science, and the mysteries of the sea.
The streets of Norman London. Let's walk through London together. It is dawn, a gray, soft dawn, the kind London seems proud of producing, as though the city wakes every morning, wrapped in a misty shawl. It knitted itself sometime in the early Middle Ages. The sky's a pale wash of silver. No dramatic sunrise, no bold streaks of color. Just a gentle glow that slowly, politely announces, I suppose it's morning now. You step onto the street. Immediately you understand why calling them streets is generous. They are narrow. No, narrower than narrow. The kind of narrow where two people passing each other have to negotiate the interaction like a medieval diplomatic summit. Timber-framed houses lean inward above you, their upper floors jutting so close together that they appear to be whispering secrets, gossiping perhaps, or complaining about the chimney smoke drifting into their windows. The smell of a medieval morning. The first thing that reaches you is the smell. Not a single smell, but a collection of smells, an ensemble, if you will. Smoke from early hearth fires, freshly baked bread, animals, always animals, river mud, tallow candles melting in doorways, and a peculiar scent historians politely label the authentic aroma of the Middle Ages, a phrase that politely avoids being too descriptive. It is a smell layered with life, work, mess, and effort. A smell formed not from luxury, but from activity. London was a living thing, and living things have a scent. Down by the water's edge. As we walk, the river's voice grows louder. The Thames in the 11th century is not the calm, dignified waterway we admire in postcards. It is louder, wilder, more unpredictable, carrying everything from merchant ships to debris that no one wants to discuss too closely. Women gather at the water to wash clothes, their hands red from cold, their laughter carrying across the surface like small bells. They talk about everything, weather, prices, neighbors, and occasionally glance up at the tower looming above them, as if to say, well, it's still there, might as well keep washing. Children dart between people, chasing chickens with joyful determination. The chickens, for their part, seem equally determined to avoid the children. It is a timeless dance. The music of the morning we move deeper into the streets. The city is awake now, stretching, yawning, grumbling, singing. You hear carts rattling over cobblestones, doors slamming, water sloshing from buckets, dogs barking, goats bleating, someone arguing loudly about the price of onions, a blacksmith striking metal with a rhythmic clang that echoes like a heartbeat, and over all of it, the melodic chaos of merchants. Bread, fresh bread, wool, finest wool, fish, fresh fish, eel, fresh eel. It's always eels. Medieval Londoners adored eels. They were cheap, plentiful, and apparently delicious, though opinions differ on that last point. The eel sellers are especially enthusiastic, shouting, "Fresh EL!" with the same energy a modern salesperson might use to sell sports cars. If your ears could vote, they would elect the eel seller as the city's official spokesperson. A babble of accents. The voices around you come in a blend of languages. The old Anglo-Saxon tongue, earthy and familiar, mixes with Norman French, smooth, flowing, slightly smug, and the result sounds something like a cat attempting to learn Spanish. Traders shout half-French prices at English customers. English craftsmen shout English words at French officials. No one completely understands anyone else, yet somehow, miraculously, business happens anyway. London has always had a talent for multilingual confusion. The people of the street. A monk shuffles past, muttering prayers under his breath, robes brushing the ground, eyes half closed in holy concentration, or possibly sleepiness. It is difficult to tell. A baker sweeps the front of his shop, fighting a battle against crumbs he will definitely lose. His loaves sit cooling on wooden shelves, and the smell of warm bread pulls everyone closer, even those who cannot afford it. A woman carrying baskets accidentally bumps into a soldier who tries to look imposing, but is distracted by the smell of pastries drifting from the bakery. A group of apprentices walks by, laughing loudly, joking about their masters and trying not to look too closely at their own hands, which are permanently stained by whatever trade they're learning. A merchant carefully arranges fabrics from Normandy and Flanders on a stall. He smooths the cloth repeatedly, the way someone might smooth their hair before a portrait. His pride is obvious, though his prices make some passers-by mutter rude comments in English, French, and hybrid combinations of the two. Even the animals add personality. Pigs trot freely through alleys. Cats stalk through shadows, hunting mice. Dogs nap wherever they please, and horses tethered outside taverns look faintly embarrassed by the noise. Every person, every creature, every object contributes to the morning symphony. the sound of work. London is at its best when it is busy. You hear butchers sharpening knives, millers grinding grain, coopers hammering barrels, tanners scraping hides, weavers working looms, locksmiths adjusting gears, boatmen yelling instructions, sailors singing sea shanties. This is not a refined, elegant city. Not yet. This is a working city. A city of hands and sweat, of tools and trade, of grit and determination. Every clang of metal, every shout, every footstep contributes to a rhythm older than the tower itself. A glance at the tower. As the sun climbs just a little higher, a reluctant climb on a cloudy morning, its light catches the pale stone of the white tower. From almost every corner of the city, you can see it rising above the rooftops. It glows faintly in the early light, like a ghostly shape carved into the sky. Some Londoners look at it with pride, some with resentment, some with fear, and some simply shrug and go back to selling eels. But no one ignores it. The tower watches the city the way a parent watches a hyperactive toddler, with patience, with suspicion, with readiness to intervene if necessary. Its presence shapes the city's moods. It is the silent note at the end of every thought, and the citizens of London, whether they admit it or not, feel safer with it there, or at least they feel less exposed. Inside the homes, if you peek inside one of the timber houses leaning over the streets, you will find a world cramped yet intimate. The floors are uneven, the ceilings low. Furniture is simple: benches, stools, chests, rough tables. A family cooks porridge over a small fire, stirring it with a wooden spoon that has served 3 generations and will probably serve 3 more. Children sit near the hearth, warming their toes, whispering about the day's plans. One wants to see the eel market. One wants to chase a chicken. One wants to climb a fence they absolutely should not climb. A mother braids her daughter's hair. A father sharpens tools. A grandmother dozes in a corner, wrapped in a blanket, snoring softly in time with the creaking of the house. Life inside is small, but warm, hard, but familiar, crowded, but comforting. Even the dirt has character. The streets aren't clean, not by any stretch of the imagination, but the dirt, the mud, the discarded straw, the piles of animal droppings, all tell stories. Stories of carts that passed before dawn, of horses that carried goods from the river, of children who stomped excitedly through puddles, of merchants who spilled grain in their hurry, of someone who dropped an eel but didn't bother to pick it up. All of these little traces form the texture of the city. London's dirt is not pleasant, but it is honest. A city with charisma, and despite the cramped houses, the noisy markets, the confusing accents, the smoke-filled air, and the general chaos of daily life, London has something else, something subtle, something magnetic, something that makes you stop in the middle of a muddy street and feel the pulse of a city alive. London has charisma, not polish, not elegance, not sophistication, not yet, but charisma. A stubborn, determined, slightly chaotic charisma that says, "We are busy. We are loud. We are messy. But we are alive." And above everything, the White Tower watches, its pale stones glowing in the morning light, like a guardian of a future the people here cannot yet imagine. London may be rough, cramped, muddy, and noisy, but even now, even in its early Norman days, the city radiates a quiet certainty. This place matters. This place will endure. And this place has only just begun to rise. The King and the Church. William needed support. Real support. Not the kind you get from nervous nobles who smile at you while calculating how quickly they could betray you if the political weather changed. He needed allies with influence, power, education, and, most importantly, credibility. So William looked toward the one institution in medieval life that never ran out of opinions, candles, or paperwork. The Church. And the Church, as always, looked back at the throne with equal parts spiritual devotion and practical curiosity, asking the eternal question, what's in it for us? Building a kingdom through prayer and stone. William knew that if he wanted a stable England, he needed a stable church behind him. And so he did what he did best. He reorganized it thoroughly, efficiently, and with the same enthusiasm a Norman architect shows when told to build an intimidating tower. He protected bishops. He confirmed church lands. He built monasteries. He strengthened ecclesiastical courts. He encouraged the use of canon law. And he introduced new rituals and structures modeled on the church he knew in Normandy. London's spiritual life, which had once been a mix of Anglo-Saxon tradition, monastic independence, and occasional delightful chaos, slowly transformed into something more orderly, more hierarchical, more Norman. It would be wrong to call it peaceful. Nothing involving bishops is ever truly peaceful, but it was, in its own way, organized peace, which the church considered the best kind. The Norman church arrives with opinions, Of course, not everything went smoothly. Bishops are famous for being holy, yes, but they are also famous for being opinionated, stubborn, politically active, and occasionally dramatic. Some welcomed William's reforms with open arms. Ah, yes, structure, finally. Others folded their arms, raised eyebrows, and muttered things like, "In my day, we didn't need Norman stone to pray." One archbishop argued loudly, another complained quietly, and someone, possibly a clerk in the back row, probably mumbled, "I miss Harold," though sadly no surviving manuscript confirms this. Still, William pressed forward, and slowly the church shifted into a new shape. A new order of bishops. William installed Norman bishops in major cities across England, including London. These were educated men who spoke Latin fluently, quoted scripture confidently, and had the architectural taste of someone who would look at a simple stone chapel and say, "Needs more height." Under their guidance, churches were rebuilt in stone, cathedrals were redesigned with crypts, arches, and apses. Monasteries gained libraries, scriptoria, and better discipline. Clergy received stricter training, louder instruction, and more rules. The Anglo-Saxon clergy found this both impressive and exhausting. One monk reportedly said, "These Normans give orders faster than God gives commandments," though this may be apocryphal. Still, the clergy adapted. London's church leaders learned to work alongside Norman officials, and the two groups occasionally bonded over shared frustrations with the tax system. The cathedral that was, and the cathedral that would come. St. Paul's Cathedral, not the grand domed masterpiece we know today, but an earlier wooden and stone version, became a center of Norman influence. It was rebuilt, expanded, redesigned, as if every new bishop wanted to leave his personal signature on the skyline. Should we make it taller? Yes. Broader? Yes. More arches? Yes. More candles? Always yes. Medieval cathedrals were essentially long-term construction projects that never ended, much like modern kitchen renovations, except cathedral renovations involved fewer arguments about countertops and more about theology. Yet each change brought London one step closer to the grand religious identity that would define it for centuries. Monks, manuscripts, and midnight regrets. Walk into any Norman-era monastery in London, and you'd hear an unmistakable sound: the quiet scratching of a quill on parchment. Monks sat in long, cold rooms, known as scriptoria, copying manuscripts by candlelight. They bent over the parchment like weary students, pulling an endless all-nighter, their eyes straining, their fingers aching, their souls questioning every life decision that had brought them to this moment. Illuminating manuscripts was a serious task. A monk might spend 3 hours painting the wings of a decorative angel, only to realize he'd spilled ink on the border, and now had to draw a strangely shaped vine to cover it. Somewhere in those dim halls, a monk would sigh the long, universal sigh of academic regret. And yet, through their work, the knowledge of Europe flowed into London. Biblical texts, histories, theological debates, medical treatises, philosophical arguments, musical notation, and occasionally doodles of cats in the margins. These manuscripts shaped London's emerging identity, a city where learning mattered, where literacy grew, where ideas crossed borders as easily as merchants crossed the Thames. The church shapes daily life. Norman influence didn't stay locked inside cathedrals or monasteries. It spilled into the streets, into markets, into households, into the rhythm of life itself. The church told Londoners when to fast, when to feast, when to rest, when to pray, and when, quite firmly, not to do business. Sunday was sacred. Holy days filled the calendar. Processions moved through the streets with chanting, incense, and banners that occasionally hit someone in the face when the wind changed direction. Baptisms, weddings, funerals, all took on new forms. Even architecture changed. Homes near churches improved. Schools formed around religious institutions. Stone became the preferred material for major buildings, a sign of permanence and stability. The church didn't simply support the Norman regime, it reshaped the city's very bones. Discipline, order, and the Norman touch. The Normans insisted on clearer church hierarchy. Archbishops overseeing bishops, bishops overseeing priests, priests overseeing parishes, monks overseeing each other, often reluctantly. This structure brought the church closer to the crown, too close at times, but it made governance smoother. Londoners who loved order only when they personally benefited from it complained at first, but eventually appreciated the stability. Under Norman influence, church courts also grew stronger. People brought disputes to ecclesiastical judges, inheritance matters, contracts, marriages, moral concerns, and occasionally strange complaints like, "My neighbor stole my goat and swears it's his goat because the goat likes him better." Church courts became busy, and busy systems gain power. A city changing in spirit. London under the Normans wasn't just a political transformation, It was a spiritual reshaping. Church bells rang more often. Monks walked the streets in greater numbers. Clergy held more influence in markets, guilds, and councils. Buildings grew taller. Services grew longer. And the city's spiritual identity deepened, like ink soaking into parchment. People prayed in new chapels. They knelt before new altars. They confessed sins to new clergy who spoke with Norman accents and used Latin terms that sounded impressive, even when no one understood them. Church music changed too. Gregorian chants filled the air. Smooth, deep, echoing melodies that drifted through narrow streets and made even a fishmonger pause and whisper, "That's quite nice." A city taking shape. Through the Norman church reforms, London began to look less like a loose collection of wooden houses and more like a city with structure. Stone churches, monastic schools, organized parishes, widening markets, busy ports, and the constant presence of clergy. Morally, politically, culturally, architecturally, the city evolved. Change wasn't always smooth. There were arguments, complaints, occasional scandals, and no doubt someone whispering, "I still miss Harold." But the foundation of the London we know, the London of stone, the London of institutions, the London of layered history, was forming. Not by accident, not by fate, but by design. By William's design, by the church's design, by the slow, steady work of monks, priests, architects, and ordinary people, living their daily lives while history quietly rearranged the world around them. Somewhere deep in its future, the great city of London was beginning to reveal its shape. Stone by stone, prayer by prayer, decision by decision. The spirit of the city was changing, and London, as always, was learning to adapt. A city under watch. William's rule was strict. Strict not in the sense of shouting or waving swords endlessly, but in the calm, deeply unsettling way. Someone might say, "We're going to make a few small changes," and then proceeds to reorganize the country from top to bottom, like a monarch possessed by the spirit of a very determined architect. Castles grew across England with remarkable speed. If a Norman general stood still too long near a hill, there was a genuine risk someone would begin constructing a fortress around him. William didn't build castles out of vanity. He built them because power needs a spine, and that spine is stone. It was as if he were determined to win a competition titled Most Fortresses per Square Mile. Had such a contest existed, William would have claimed first prize, second prize, and likely invented a third prize, just to win that too. London becomes the kingdom's nerve center. While castles sprouted across the countryside, London itself grew into the beating administrative heart of Norman England, the place where the kingdom's lifeblood pulsed through narrow streets and smoky halls. Every detail of governance flowed through the city. Courts, where disputes were settled with a mixture of law, prayer, and occasional shouting. Taxes, always taxes, flowing into royal coffers with dependable weight. Records, scribes writing endlessly, their fingers stained with ink and regret. Merchants, haggling, calculating, and dreaming of profit. Diplomats, bowing, negotiating, sometimes pretending to understand Norman French. Guards, patrolling with the stiff seriousness of men who know a king is watching. Prisoners, dragged toward the tower, often looking like they had several regrets. Craftsmen, hauling timber, shaping stone, building, mending, repairing, and approximately 2 trillion eels, because medieval Londoners cherished eels the way modern cities cherish coffee shops. All of them, people, institutions, and slippery creatures, passed through London every day. The city crackled with activity. Not joyful activity, perhaps, but the purposeful hum of a kingdom tightening its grip on its own future. A city of stone and ambition, one of the great Norman contributions to England, besides a massive shift in noble land ownership and a sudden explosion of French names, was stone. The Normans loved stone. Stone was strong. Stone was permanent. Stone did not burn as easily as wood, and London, with its charming habit of catching fire whenever candles, ovens, or bakers were feeling ambitious, needed permanence. Slowly, wooden structures gave way to stone supports, stone walls, stone halls, or at least wooden buildings, reinforced with stone foundations, so they didn't collapse in a stiff breeze. Norman masons became heroes of the construction world. Their chisels rang day and night. London's skyline began to change, subtle at first, then unmistakable as years passed. Stone halls rose where timber huts once stood. Stone churches replaced old wooden sanctuaries. Stone warehouses expanded along the river. And of course, the tower continued growing, the most intimidating reminder of Norman power in all England. London was becoming harder, stronger, more permanent. A city of intention rather than accident. Government finds its center. Under William, London didn't just grow physically, it grew politically. In the Anglo-Saxon era, power was dispersed. Nobles ruled territories. Kings traveled constantly, and councils moved with the court. Now, much of the kingdom's bureaucracy began settling into London like feathers gathering at the bottom of a nest. Royal clerks set up offices, unrolling scrolls the length of small carpets. Scribes scribbled furiously, writing in Latin so neat it could make a monk weep with admiration. Courts handled disputes ranging from land rights to contracts to accusations such as, "My neighbor stole my chickens," or "My friend insists his goat is a holy goat," which it absolutely is not. London's courts saw everything. Taxes, too, became more organized and heavier. Norman taxation resembled a very stern parent saying, "I know you have money. Give it to me. It's for your own good." The city's population had mixed feelings about this. The Tower keeps watching. The Tower of London didn't merely exist, it watched. Its walls absorbed whispers. Its gates measured loyalty. Its rooms held secrets the city preferred not to discuss at loud volume. Prisoners arrived under guard, looking up at the pale stone walls with expressions ranging from terror to disbelief, to the faint hope that this was an elaborate misunderstanding. Some were political prisoners, some were rebels, some were simply unlucky. But the Tower's presence meant one thing. London was under surveillance, and William expected obedience. Guards patrolled. Messengers ran between outposts. Officials sent reports to the king. Spies listened for signs of dissent. A city once proud of its independence now lived with a fortress leaning over its shoulder. Yet the great irony was this: people complained about Norman watchfulness, but they also felt safer. For the first time in years, bandits retreated farther from the roads. Trade became more consistent. Disputes were settled by courts rather than knives. And despite the pressure of Norman law, the city thrived. Not all was calm. Yet William's rule wasn't a long, peaceful afternoon nap. England simmered beneath the surface. There were rebellions, plots, arguments, skirmishes, and the occasional noble waking up and deciding, "You know what? I think I'll try being king today." Several regions rose against William. He crushed them methodically, with a determination that made even loyal followers quietly mutter, "He does not play." London watched it all. The city stayed loyal, partly because remaining loyal was the practical choice, and partly because the Tower made disloyalty physically uncomfortable. The Norman grip tightened, not cruelly, but undeniably, and with every passing year, the Tower's shadow stretched further across the river. Life grows comfortable and crowded. Despite the looming authority, life inside London grew vibrant. Markets expanded. Imports increased. Silver coins circulated faster. craftsmen opened new shops. Foreign traders arrived more frequently, and the city grew more crowded by the season. Stone buildings brought a sense of permanence. Roads were repaired. Streets widened. Only slightly, but in medieval London, slightly was an architectural victory. Trade booming meant boats crowded the wharves like excited ducks. Fishmongers did brisk business. Alehouses overflowed. Taverns stayed loud well past sunset. Monks tried with limited success to quiet sinful behavior. Children ran in impossible directions, and London developed the hum of a city that knew it mattered. This hum was loud, chaotic, messy, beautiful. The hum of a city, not just living, but growing. Stone, structure, stability. William's goal was simple: to turn England into a place where the crown held firm power, and London stood as its unshakable core. Stone buildings, stone walls, stone halls. They replaced wood with permanence, replaced uncertainty with law, replaced scattered authority with centralized rule. London changed from a loose collection of districts into a capital worthy of an ambitious dynasty. And the Normans, with their love of order, taxes, and very tall towers, did not hesitate to ensure that transformation happened. The king who would not live forever. But William, despite his achievements, despite his armies, despite his towers and stones and laws, was mortal. As the years wore on, he grew older, heavier, less agile, and increasingly irritable, which is understandable given the constant demands of ruling a kingdom filled with both rebellious nobles and eel merchants shouting at sunrise. Eventually, William's reign drew to a close, but his mark on London did not fade. The towers stood, the laws endured, the language shifted, the stone architecture remained, and London itself, busier, firmer, wealthier, more structured than ever, was permanently changed. When William died in 1087, he left behind a city that had become the administrative, political, and architectural cornerstone of England. A city under watch, a city of stone, a city with a future. His sons would inherit the throne, and London would march into turbulent waters. Civil wars, disputes, shifting alliances, and new kings with new ideas. But one truth remained. London was no longer the city William had conquered. It was the city he had reshaped. And from those foundations, the rest of its story would rise. William II and the Quiet Chaos. When William the Conqueror died in 1087, the kingdom did what kingdoms often do when a strong ruler departs. It panicked slightly, argued loudly, and then hurried to crown the next available heir before anyone else could claim the chair. That heir was William II, known to history, somewhat rudely, as William Rufus, a nickname referring to his reddish complexion, hair, or possibly the reddish tone his face turned whenever he became angry, which was frequently. William Rufus was bold, fiery, energetic, impulsive, and quite possibly allergic to the act of listening to advice. When counselors spoke, he nodded thoughtfully as if absorbing their wisdom, only to stand up moments later and do precisely the opposite of what they suggested, but with great enthusiasm. A king with the energy of a bonfire, William II approached kingship with the energy of a man constantly walking slightly too fast for everyone else. He spoke loudly, laughed loudly, argued loudly, and governed loudly. He rode horses with reckless confidence. He held feasts that seemed to last for days. He made decisions at a pace that left his advisors clutching prayer beads. He was charming, frustrating, charismatic, and unpredictable. He loved extravagance, color, art, music, hunting, and spectacle. He disliked limits, church criticism, moral restrictions, and judging from his behavior, gravity. He pushed boundaries the way a child pushes buttons on a new toy, eagerly and with little regard for consequences. Yet London, surprisingly, benefited from his reign. A boost to the city. For all his chaos, William II improved trade. He strengthened routes, enforced safer roads, and encouraged the use of ports. London's merchants felt the change immediately. More ships, more goods, more silver, more opportunities to shout at customers in a blend of English and French. Craftsmen prospered. Alehouses grew busier. Markets expanded. And the city's population continued its steady climb. Merchants rarely cared who sat on the throne, so long as business was good. And under William II, business was very good. A troubled relationship with the church. The church, however, had thoughts, strong thoughts, very strong thoughts. William II's spiritual life could politely be described as underdeveloped. He wasn't hostile to religion. He simply treated it like an optional suggestion. He delayed appointing bishops. He collected church revenues during vacancies. He ignored moral admonitions. He hosted feasts that made priests whisper, "This is excessive," while averting their eyes. The conflict between king and church became a constant hum beneath the surface of English politics. London's bishops wrote letters. Norman abbots complained. Priests muttered in sacristies. Monks prayed harder, hoping the king would one day realize that heaven did indeed have rules. But William Rufus remained delightfully unmoved. If heaven had rules, he thought, Surely it also had loopholes. Arguments, nobles, and general chaos. It wasn't just the church. William quarreled with nobles. He quarreled with barons. He quarreled with his own brothers. He quarreled with anyone who seemed too confident. He had a magnificent talent for creating tension, a real gift. Where his father ruled with calculated order, William II ruled with spirited, unpredictable momentum. London didn't always know what to expect. One day the king might announce tax reforms. The next day he might declare a lavish celebration. The day after that he might ride into the forest for an extended hunting spree. But the city adapted. London always adapts. And William, for all his volatility, kept the capital thriving. Life in London during his reign. London during William II's tenure was lively and loud. Ships crowded the Thames. Markets throbbed with activity. Guilds gained influence. New stone buildings rose from old wooden plots. Craftsmen experimented with Norman techniques. Monks copied manuscripts while muttering about the king's behavior. Fishmongers sold eels with the same intense enthusiasm as always. And street performers entertained crowds with juggling, songs, and jokes about royalty that were only funny because the king wasn't there to hear them. It was a bustling, ambitious city with a new sense of purpose and growing confidence. Even the Tower of London felt different under William Rufus. Less of a cold monument, more of a symbol of ongoing royal presence. And the king often used it as a base when in the city, though probably with significantly loud footsteps. The king's personality creates tension. For all the progress, however, tension hovered around William II like a persistent fog. His spending habits drained resources. His refusal to marry or produce heirs created rumors. His circle of flamboyant courtiers annoyed the clergy. His disregard for church warnings tested patience on both earthly and heavenly levels. People who admired his energy worried about his recklessness. People who admired his strength worried about his impulse. People who admired nothing still worried, because worrying was a medieval pastime, almost as popular as eel eating. Londoners felt the instability in the air. The city's leaders watched the king's decisions carefully, ready to adjust policies or raise eyebrows as needed. Underneath the vibrant surface, England was a pot, simmering at the edge of boiling. And then, unexpectedly, boiling stopped. A death wrapped in mystery. William II died in 1100. The king who burst into every scene like a flaming comet, left the world in a quiet forest clearing, shot by an arrow during a hunting expedition. The death was abrupt, strange, awkward, and historically speaking, deeply mysterious. The official version states, "The king and his companions were hunting. someone shot an arrow. The arrow struck William Rufus. He died instantly. The archer, Walter Tyrrell, fled the scene immediately, which, to be fair, is a natural reaction when you accidentally shoot the king, or when you purposely shoot the king while pretending it was an accident. Rumors spread quickly. Was it murder? Negligence? A plot? Divine judgment? No one knows. Historians still argue about it, and historians enjoy arguments even more than bishops do. When London heard the news, the reaction was probably a long, silent pause, followed by, "Well, that happened." Some Londoners may have crossed themselves. Some may have sighed. Some may have wondered how many taxes would change. And someone, inevitably, whispered, "I sort of miss Harold." The aftermath. A kingdom scrambles. William II had no wife, no children, no legitimate heirs. Only a legacy of chaos, brilliance, frustration, growth, and unresolved tension. His younger brother Henry acted fast. He raced to seize the treasury at Winchester, gathered support, and was crowned Henry I within days. The kingdom barely had time to process William II's death. London barely had time to blink. It was a transition as quick as the shuffle of cards. One king gone, another king raised, and the city braced itself for the next chapter. William II's legacy. Despite his fiery reputation and tumultuous relationships, William II left London stronger than he found it. He strengthened trade. He encouraged urban growth. He maintained the Tower's authority. He protected the city's essential role in governance. And he helped shape the cultural fusion of Anglo-Saxon and Norman elements. Yes, his reign was loud, messy, complicated, occasionally alarming. But London thrives on such things. The city grows in chaos, reinvents itself after conflict, and finds identity in complexity. William II's years on the throne were not peaceful, yet they were meaningful. He was a king of contradictions, a ruler loved by some, feared by others, and confusing to almost everyone. Quiet chaos defined him. And in that chaos, London found a path toward the next era, toward stability, structure, and the long reign of his brother Henry. But that story belongs to another chapter.
Tonight, we have wandered through the crowded streets of Norman London, listened to merchants and craftsmen at work, and watched church bells and royal power shape the rhythm of the city. Above it all, the Tower stood quietly beside the Thames, guarding a London that was growing stronger, wealthier, and more permanent. Now let the markets fall silent. Let the smoke fade from the rooftops, and allow the river mist to soften every distant sound. Rest gently, my friend. Our journey will continue with Henry I, the White Ship, and the storm that would soon engulf England.